Welcome to Functional Talk, the Functional Med for the People podcast, where we bring you the latest insights and practical tips on how functional medicine can transform your health and empower you to live your best life. I'm your host, Michelle Brooks, Doctor of Nursing Practice with over 30 years of nursing experience. Join me as we dive deep into the world of functional medicine, exploring the cutting-edge research, evidence-based practices, and real-life success stories that will inspire and empower you on your health journey. Subscribe to Functional Talk on your favorite podcast platform and join our community of health-conscious individuals who are committed to living their best lives as through the principles of functional medicine. Get ready to be inspired, educated, and empowered. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Functional Talk, the Health for the People podcast. I'm your host, Michelle, and today we are going to revisit our first episode and talk a little more about what is functional medicine and where does the root cause come in. So I hope to break it down a little more so you can understand exactly how a functional med provider might be able to help you. So looking at it through that lens, let's dive in. In functional medicine, there are 7 core interconnected processes that are going on. We have your digestion and how you absorb your nutrients. So that's 1. There's your immune system. That's 2. That includes infections and any inflammation. 3, your energy, huge important area here. If you remember anything about biology and the mitochondria being the powerhouse of the cell. 4, biotransformation and elimination. Basically, we're looking for toxins and how you're able to disarm these toxins and move them out of your body. So you'll hear us talk about your detox pathways and are they open? Then 6, there's transport. This is how things are getting around in your body, your cardiovascular system, the lymphatic system. And then we look at communication between your cells. These are the neurotransmitters, the hormones, enzymes, and they're doing their job and they're getting along. Are they balanced? And then there's the structural integrity. So this is not just your skeleton and your muscle, but it's also the structural integrity of each of your cells. And we'll talk about that. Now, though those are the 7 processes, there are also a few processes that often these physiological ones will revolve around and they can be severely impacted by things like factors like your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual processes. So these are all factors that can also influence the other physical factors. Now, when we look at these processes, functional medicine providers will often spend a great deal of time asking you questions that you may have never been asked before. And you might think, I can't believe I paid all this money for someone to ask me, how many hours do I sleep at night? When I found out how important it was to get the proper amount of sleep, I've been a nurse for a long time, and I knew it was important, but when I found out how important and that some of my symptoms I was having when I was going through my health crisis were that I couldn't sleep more than an hour or so. I'd wake up every hour on the hour, lying awake from 4 a.m. until I finally gave up and got out of bed so I could be somewhat more productive just lying there. When I found all that out and how important it was, it just blew my mind. Many providers will start asking the questions about sleep and relaxation. They might ask you, how long does it take you to fall asleep? Do you feel rested when you get up? One of my telltale signs was I would wake up in the morning and I would feel like I needed to go back to bed. That was how tired I was. Exercise and movement. So we look at what your activity is, how often, how intense, what kind of activity. Specifically, I want to know what keeps you from being active, what's slowing you down. We look at nutrition. One of the things that most of us do not want to discuss. If there's one thing I'd have to say that the majority of people are resistant to is to change their diet. We do not want to be told that we can't have our cake and eat it too. But I want to know when you eat. I want to know what kinds of food you're eating. What's your environment around eating? Is it stressful and on the go, or are you doing what we call rest and digesting? One of my first moves toward health was to make my lunch, and I would sit outside with the dogs and I'd have my bare feet in the grass in the sun. This was during the summer, of course. I had to eat my lunch, take a full hour away from my desk, away from email, and just relax. What a change from grabbing my food and heading back to my office to sit at my desk and mindlessly eat. Stress. So, y'all know this is my favorite soapbox because I lived it for so many years. And when I couldn't figure out what in the world was going on with my body in my mid 50s, I had a huge wake up call to the ramifications of chronic stress and the burden that it places, literally, the disease burden that it places on your body. Research has shown that you can eat the perfect diet, exercise, and the whole works, but if you don't get a grip on your chronic stress, it will lead to cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, cancer. I'm pretty sure that it was mentioned last week because I lived this. I ate the perfect clean diet. I was plant based. I didn't eat processed foods, and I was running, exercising, strength training. Comes to find out, my A1C was elevated, one of the indicators for diabetes and prediabetes. My weight wouldn't move. And when I looked back at my life, I did this huge reflection. And my childhood was built on stress. We had an extremely stressful home for children to be exposed to. We never knew what mood dad would be in, if he would come home swinging or not. But when kids learn and live like that, they go into the survival mode, this constant state of fight or flight. This kind of brings us into another area of lifestyle factors, relationships, because coming out of that type of home life and then going into 21 years of a rocky, dysfunctional marriage, that's going to leave you with physical consequences of stress. If you want to know how that can affect you, go back and listen to last week's talk. I talked a little bit about stress and how if we don't nip it and we don't take a time out through every day to break the pattern of chronic stress, the stress that we build up throughout the day, if we don't take time to get rid of that, I talk about that in last week's podcast. It's called Ditch the Stress. So look that up. Other relationships. How are your other relationships? Are people living alone? Do they have a social connection? This was a huge revolution when we realized that social connection is a big indicator of outcomes, of health outcomes. Are people able to ask for help when they need it? What is getting in the way of them being able to ask? Do they have self-esteem issues? Do they have access problems that they don't have access to other people? These all impact your health. Now, when looking for root cause, we look at those factors that may have been genetic, like we look at a clotting factor, maybe a cancer gene. We look at predisposing factors like frequent ear infections. As a child, did they receive multiple antibiotics, which could have altered their gut microbiome? This affects, we're just on the cusp of beginning to figure out all of this. And just knowing that this affects the assimilation, remember the digestion, how that food comes in, if something's wrong with their gut, if it's altered, it can't process the nutrients, or perhaps it's what we call a leaky gut, where we've created this problem where the gut has become so damaged that there's actually holes in it where small food particles leak out of the wall of the gut and trigger immune reactions because those particles are foreign. They're not supposed to be there. And we have this God-given, beautiful immune system that says, hey, you're not supposed to be there. And so this is what often starts an autoimmune condition and why we see so many food allergies. Because if we see a piece of corn outside of the intestine, the body says, hey, corn, you're not supposed to be there. It builds up these antibodies to the corn. And then lo and behold, we find people being allergic to corn. We look at triggering events. This is an event that has a distinct timing, and it causes the onset of an issue immediately or within a few days after. It can cause a permanent condition, or it could be something that's more transient that comes and goes. But regardless of what it is, your health is forever changed because of it. Now, I had a stressful event as a young adult before I got married, after I was out of high school. whenever I come into a similar situation like that now, I have increased stress and anxiety. I literally, I for a long time, I didn't recognize it as PTSD, but then I finally did, and I was able to build some coping mechanisms for it. But there are still days, and I might even ruminate over the possibility of a triggering situation occurring again. I don't want to get in that situation, and I ruminate over the possibility of it happening. Other examples might be a birth experience, a car accident, another trauma, or even a biochemical exposure. Being a COVID nurse, I can be triggered by people in masks now. So these are situations that can activate problems. And if we don't practice coping methods, that's the important part. We can have all this stuff wrong in our lives, but we need to develop mechanisms to help us cope. Things are going to happen. Things are going to happen to us. Bad things are going to happen to us. What do we do to develop coping mechanisms to get through them and to allow our bodies to downgrade the stress that we're experiencing? If we don't practice these coping methods like self-care, nature, breathing exercises, journaling and reflection. For me, God and my Bible and spiritual connection in the morning, if I don't practice that, that's me embracing my coping mechanism. Or we need to learn them, we need to use them. If we don't do that, if we're not using these coping mechanisms, these events can actually trigger conditions that are ripe for chronic disease. Now, we talked a lot about factors earlier about the assimilation, your defense, energy, communication, transportation, structural integrity, and elimination. Those are all factors of the physical body that we talked about. And the important thing to realize is the interconnectedness. No system seems to work in a silo. And when you have a heart problem in conventional medicine, what do? You go to a cardiologist. So we tend to get independent when we head towards specialized medicine. So if you notice a symptom or you develop a problem, it's helpful to ask, how is this problem affecting my whole body? If you develop a leg pain, what's the effect on your cardiovascular? Well, you might not exercise as much. Maybe it affects you emotionally and you get depressed because, boy, you just love to exercise. Maybe it affects your energy because your exercise always leaves you feeling energized and rejuvenated. So there's this imbalance in one area that's affecting all the areas. And we need to unlearn this isolation of our physical problem. So it's okay to ask doctors, well, if this is wrong, how's it going to affect this other area of my life? Those are great questions to ask. In repairing the body, we will usually take the 5R approach. We use this in I don't know if you'll ever hear them say this to you, the 5R approach, but I'm going to go through these 5Rs, and it kind of being the mnemonic, maybe it will help you trigger some things as you're thinking about different situations, health situations in your life, on how to begin to repair your own body. So first step is we remove, because we ask the first question, what is causing the problem? So, okay, I'm going to go with one. We're going to look at a little case study here. So I'm going to go with one I hear all the time. I've got a hard time sleeping at night. I have lived this myself, so it's a great case study. Okay, so first question, what is causing it? I'm thinking about it. Well, I've been feeling sluggish in the office lately after lunch, so I head out to Starbucks and I grab a triple shot latte venti and I go back to work. Okay, this was a true story for me several years ago. So as I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, well, let's see. According to the functional medicine approach, can you remove this? Let's look at the first R, remove. Stop getting the latte. Go for a decaf option. No sugar. Yes, no? What do you think about that? Well, maybe I can try that. If you don't feel that you can remove it, can you get the grande or the tall? Can you leave out the triple shot? What can you do to reduce it? When you have removed this possibility and you check back, maybe you're sleeping a little bit better, but then again, maybe you aren't. So now we're looking at the next R of the 5Rs. We go from remove to replace. What is it in my diet that I might be missing that could possibly be affecting my sleep? Could I be low in magnesium? Depending on when and where the research was done, you'll find 40 to 75% of American adults are deficient in magnesium, which is an essential mineral, people. We don't make it. We have to get it from somewhere. So is it missing? Well, this is a simple fix, and adding magnesium rich foods or a simple supplement can help you improve sleep. I've had tremendous effects by doing this, but a disclosure here, you should be working with your healthcare provider, first checking a magnesium level, or more specifically, a blood cell magnesium, because that'll tell us how much magnesium is in the cell, which is where we need it to work its magic. Then you can work together or on any necessary supplementation. So there are people out there who do not need to be taking magnesium. Certain diagnoses do not need extra magnesium. So always check with your provider first. But that is a great example of a simple replacement that could have a profound effect across the symptoms because magnesium is necessary for multiple body functions. So let's look at the next R, the third one, re-inoculate. This is using pre and probiotics. Now, I'm no way recommending that you run out and grab these, but there are some things that can harm your gut bacteria, like frequent and broad spectrum antibiotics, sugar, stress, celiac disease, being sensitive to pesticides and chemicals that are on our food. So, a lot to think about here. And I'll be talking in future episode about pre and probiotics. So it's way too much to cover here in this amount of time, but this is a part of what we look at. There's specific tests. We can do specific stool analysis that'll help us look at your gut bacteria, what is out of balance, and we work with patients to get their gut bacteria back into balance. So the next R, number 4, is to repair. This is where we use the food and supplements to help heal our bodies. When I went through my health crisis, the first thing I needed to do was to realize that it took me 50 plus years to get here. So I needed to be patient and not stress more over the healing process, but embrace this time as a time of learning, getting to know my body, listening to what was working and what wasn't working. And I took some herbal supplements to help me sleep. But though, because actually through testing, I found my cortisol was high at night. So we looked at root cause. First, my cortisol was elevated at night. This is also going to raise your blood sugar. So there, could be the reason for the A1C being elevated. And I began to take a supplement to help manage my cortisol before bed. I also stopped snacking after 7 p.m. Big thing for me. My A1C was elevated, so this was a huge help to bring this down, the A1C from 5.7 to 5.4 in a matter of 12 weeks. I also counted my carbs during the day. I was keeping them under 80 grams of carbs. And when that practitioner told me I needed to decrease my carbohydrate intake, I'm thinking I'm an ultra runner. I go out, I'll run 4 or 5 hours on a weekend. We live on carbs. And so when I started doing this and going through this process, it was a very difficult decision for me, but it's been very good for my blood sugar. And I was able to also kind of move towards intermittent fasting, which brought my carb count a little bit lower. But all in all, these were many of the ways that I began to repair my body. Now I'm able to look at my Garmin, which tracks my sleeping, and I'm actually getting better sleep than I have in a long time. I'm getting more sleep more often, better REM sleep, better deep sleep. So important in the repair process. So now that leads us to the last R, rebalance. I feel that I'm going to be here a while, and most people probably live here, but I notice that if something gets out of whack now, I'm all over it. I'm practicing self-awareness. I'm listening to my body. I watch my sleep tracker. I think about my diet. What did I eat? I'm learning more about my body and how it responds to things that I put in it, things that come around it, how I feel better when I practice care, when I put more time and effort into being cheerful around my family, when I'm able to focus on my responsibilities, when I get more exercise, when I address my negative mindset. Taking time every morning to focus spiritually for me is key to the flow of my day and staying in that rebalanced mode. This has really been a lot of information for you. I know I'm packing it in here, and over time, we will continue to look at various elements of this and unpack it a little bit more, one bite at a time. But here's a challenging question for you. What do we do when we cannot pinpoint a root cause? You've gone to the doctors, you've had tests, it's all normal, but really, there's no test that is going to tell you that, like in my case, my root cause began with stress induced as a child, that it as it compiled, and compounded. I developed fatigue and chronic pain as a teenager. And though I've always had clean x rays on my knees, they never showed a problem. My ortho doctor labeled me with a juvenile arthritis of the knee because he couldn't come up with another explanation of why I had this pain. If you don't see an immediate root cause, like the triple shot latte, that was an easy one to see. Let's dig a little bit deeper. And this is what functional medicine does. It says, is there an underlying infection? Well, having the wonderful integrative practitioner I had, she drew a viral panel on me, and lo and behold, it lit up. I had 4 different viruses. Though they weren't active, they were still various antigens and antibodies floating around in my body. And just like we talked about the food particles, my body was saying, hey, you don't belong here. And this promotes some inflammatory response and inflammation. What about dental pain? Do you have gum disease, or do your gums bleed when you brush or you floss? This is a clue that there is some oral bacteria going on, which is the beginning of your gut microbiome, because what goes in your mouth takes some of that with it right down into the gut. Are you allergic to food? Last year, I practiced the elimination diet. I cut out all wheat, soy, dairy for over 3 months. I didn't have any improvement, except that I felt maybe my ankles had more movement. Maybe they might have been a little less stiff, but there was no improvement in that chronic pain that I'd had for so long and that was really getting out of hand. I had joint pain in every joint below the waist and was one of the key reasons that I sought help from an integrative practitioner. And I knew from being a nurse that I didn't want to be stuck on pain meds. I'd had pain, as I mentioned, since I was a teenager, never wanted to be addicted or dependent on these pain medications, but I did take my share of Bufferin, Tylenol, Advil, all of which is not great on a long-term basis. So I hope that I have given you an overview of functional medicine, helped you understand a little more about the process that you would encounter as a functional medicine patient, sharing a lot of things that I've been through and my testimony with this. Many times my patients come already having seen their primary care, their integrative practitioners, and they're still looking for that root cause. Being a natural born problem solver, I'll go looking for it. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a nurse practitioner, but I am a doctor of nursing practice. I've got over 30 years of working with patients, teaching them about how to take their medications. And I've come to find that much of our instruction needs to change. We need to focus on what's making them ill rather than on just what is going to make them better. Because 9 times out of 10, what makes them better causes another problem. If the diet of fried chicken, McDonald's, and ice cream every night is your reason for your cholesterol medication, your high blood pressure pill, your diabetes injection that now helps you with your obesity, why are we not changing the one thing that could make you better? Why are we throwing out the idea of a healthy diet because we think it tastes terrible? Why are we not giving it a try to see if we feel better, if we think better? Here's a big one, thinking better. If you feed your brain better food, you're going to think better. You're going to move better. If our health numbers are moving in the right direction, why aren't we doing this? Functional medicine and lifestyle medicine is a choice, and that's what it comes down to. You can choose to be dependent on medication for diabetes, or you can look at trying to make some changes and see if that doesn't grant you more freedom in your health. Might also prevent your one medication from becoming 2 medications to 4 medications to hospitalizations and, unfortunately, possibly your demise. Not to mention the overwhelming costs. Because regardless of whether you have insurance, partial or whole insurance, there is a cost, whether it's financial to you or your family, the community, or the cost to your family for losing out on healthy time with you. And that's the reason that I am doing what I do, because I want you to experience your best optimal health. And I will do what I can to help you get there. But I can't do it for you. This has been such a short time to cover so much information, but if you would like more information about functional medicine, please head to my website. I'll put the link in the show notes, and you can schedule your free 15-minute call, discuss if there's something you can work on or where you would start. I also have to put this plug in. I'm so excited that we will be starting the Mediterranean diet and program beginning in February. It's going to be a 21-day program. Once again, the Mediterranean diet is at the top of the list for the nation, for Americans, for being the best diet, the healthiest diet. For most people, that is true. We are starting with groups, small groups, so that you'll get the best possible support. You'll get my help, my assistance. This is a diet plan that's been developed by registered dietitians and nutritionists. And you can check that out on the website as well. So take advantage of a free opportunity or a small investment in this diet program, but I hope it helps. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful week and take care of yourself. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Functional Talk, the Functional Health for the People podcast. I hope that today's talk has been informative and useful for you. Just a reminder that Functional Talk does not replace the care provided by your healthcare provider. Information that is given here is not meant to cure disease, but solely as an educational service to the healthcare consumer. You can find us on social media at Dr. Brooks RN on Instagram or My4D Wellness on Facebook. For more information, you can check out our website at my4dwellness.com. You can also email or direct message with any questions. If you're enjoying our podcast, be sure to follow, like, and share. We hope to see you back here again next week on Functional Talk.